The foundation of Vyapt Growth Series is a shout out for collective survival, collective hope, and collective responsibility. While we see a hope for a better future, our survival in present is even more important. Numerous foundations and corporate, through their CSR activities, are helping millions of people across the globe, serving them tirelessly in this pandemic through various means. These foundations have risen to the occasion at a time when mankind is facing one of the biggest crises the world has ever seen. These are the stories of the new world where dimensions of map fall short and act of kindness rise high, where humanism thrives as we unite. In our growth series today, we have with us Ms. Mamta Saikia, who is the CEO of Bharti Foundation. Ms. Mamta, with over 28 years of experience, has been instrumental with her contribution in social development sector. Welcome to the show, Ms. Mamta.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, depending on what the time is, the show.
We start with the first curiosity. My first curiosity is, according to you, how is the various foundations could be reaching out for the growth of mankind in this pandemic?
Pankaj, I think you started with a question which is, I think question itself is inspirational because it assumes in itself, and which is a correct assumption, that the mankind has actually together risen to face this challenge. And we're seeing so many stories, so many inspirational stories, so many stories of courage, so many stories of kindness that I believe somewhere we as human beings are rediscovering, what it means to take a pause, to look after each other. We are, somewhere this pandemic has made us all value the things we were taking for granted. So while yes, there is a lot of pain, especially for the families who are going through it, but there is also hope and some positive things which would come out of it as days and weeks and months pass. So first I'll talk about Bharti Foundation, and then I'll talk about other, the great work that is being done by NGOs and corporate foundations also. So Bharti Foundation, many of the viewers may know about us. We primarily work in the field of education, and we work primarily in rural India. So most of our own schools, which are Satya Bharti schools, are in the 6 states: Haryana, Rajasthan, Punjab, UP, Tamil Nadu, West Bengal, in the deep rural areas.
Okay.
Plus what we do, we take learnings from our own schools, which are completely free of cost schools for underprivileged children. And we take those learnings and good practices into government schools. So the government schools also that we pick up are in rural areas itself. And this program has actually taken us to 16 states of the country. We are present in Jammu and Kashmir, we are present in Assam, we are present in Meghalaya. So our outreach from northeast to north to south, we've really expanded. Our schools, of course, I'm personally very attached. These are our schools, our children, our teachers, and we are doing some great work in our schools. But when COVID started, and all of us would remember that was March 2nd and 3rd week, when suddenly the lockdown happened. And in most of the country, that's the time one academic year is getting over and the next academic year is yet to start. So for most of the schools, children went back home into lockdown without books for new academic year. Mm-hmm. And for any educational institution, that's the biggest challenge. Second challenge was teachers. In cities, in good privileged schools, you still have EdTech coming in. There is technology, there are smart classes, but not so much in village schools, not so much in, not as extensively as in government schools or schools which are NGO based. Most of the village teachers are not even very tech savvy, So I remember our initial days so we started working with both our own teachers as well as government teachers. And first I'll talk about our program. Our teachers, because these are Satya Bharati schools, we had 2-3 very good processes which came to our rescue. Those processes were our PTMs, parent teacher meetings, are very strong, right? So which meant that most of our teachers had the phone numbers of all the parents on their mobile phone, right? So we were not struggling with database issues. Most of the teachers were very connected with parents because PTMs are regular. Parents they're supposed to come to school and they come to school each month. The second process, and I don't know, I think sometime, you're being guided by a bigger power. Something we had started 1.5 years back, we called it phone PTM. Okay. What used to happen in phone PTM was that we would call parents, whoever had the smartphone, and we would train them to how to download apps, correct? So the Khan Academy and Hello English was very kind to us. They gave it almost free of cost licenses to us. So we'll train them on how to download an app. We'll train them on how to go to YouTube and look for education related videos. For 1.5 years, we were training our parents on how to use a smartphone for education, correct? And what happened over 1.5 years was, parents who did not have a smartphone, next time when they were buying a new phone, they would put in that little extra money and buy a smartphone so that they could also come for, the phone PTM. So we also had parents who were already trained on how to download apps. That after COVID, so many new educational apps came. And we were so lucky, we did not have a problem. We would send a link and our parents knew how to download, how to install, and how to just simply get going. The third process that helped us was home mentoring process. So, most of our children come from first generation learners, right? They are not from families where parents can, in case of many middle class, upper middle class families, when our children come into board classes, there is a tutor, there's a tuition teacher who's coming home. Most of us are educated enough to help our children, whereas that is not the case with our parents. But we were very clear about the fact that parents have to play a role. So we started, again, 1.5 years back, something called home mentoring process, where we train our parents of our students, into how to look after your child at home. Make sure he's kept 2 hours aside for doing homework. Make sure he's playing for, at least 2 hours outside. So we were training our parents on supporting the children as much as they can. And, telling them, can you find a relative or an elder cousin sister or cousin brother who's on a higher class? Tell that cousin sister to come for half an hour every alternate day to help your child with, any doubt. So we had already put those kind of, to an extent, structures in place. And that is the biggest need today. I mean, all of us know, even in, across the world, when children are studying at home, parents have to now get involved. You cannot do any education. So we were very lucky that we had these things working for us. So you won't believe it, within 48 hours of lockdown, the Satya Bharati schooling system started going virtual, right? Not online, because our students do not have computers at home. They do not have tabs at home, but virtual as in our teachers started sending, either assignments over WhatsApp, correct? They would make a teaching learning material and make a little video explaining a concept to the child. The child would see it, child would do assignment, and our parents were already trained. So they would take a photograph of the assignment. Sometimes when a child is reading and the child is not getting a pronunciation right, the parent would record that, send it back to teacher. Teacher would send right pronunciation. I mean, it was simply magical, Pankaj, to see that in village, I think the commitment, the passion was the force which drove technology. Because how much can you teach children through smartphones, through WhatsApp? Remember, these are children from poor families. So sometimes there would only be one smartphone being shared by 2, 3 children in the family, you know, because there are also joint families, so they're sharing the same phone. When the lockdown opened and parents started going out, we also realized that the number of hours the child was getting phone is also now reducing, because parent takes the phone along with. So our teachers had to actually innovate and make sure that they teach in a manner, so online classes, synchronous classes are almost negligible, because you can't have a child, we don't have a guarantee that child would have a phone at 11 a.m.
Very
and
true.
all the children would have phone at 11 a.m. So it's mostly asynchronous, where our teachers make videos. We have taken some of the very good apps like TikTok, Khan Academy, Hello English, I've already told you about. There's something called Lattu Kids. And we're making sure that our children are accessing those. Our teachers actually kind of send them a list, do this here, do this here. So absolutely magical what I saw on the ground. And I believe it's passion which drove technology, not technology which drove education. So while we were having this exciting work in our schools, we also started working with government teachers, and the Ministry of Education had started sending a lot of links to government teachers, a lot of new resources. Diksha is a very, very powerful medium where a lot of good stuff exists. So we started working with government teachers as well, and to motivate them to get in touch with students. And today, even the government schools where we are present in over 800 schools. Over 40% of the students are connected with teachers over WhatsApp and mobiles, which is and these government teachers, we've kind of trained them on virtual pedagogy. Some of the teachers who are not very savvy, we've trained them on some of the basic things, how to get onto a website and how to surf, how to open a link, how to, what to do with a PDF and things like that. But we're seeing so much of passion among government teachers, amazing work. They're doing amazing work on foot as well. They're going home to home, distributing meals. They've done book distribution. Somewhere, and if I'm taking too long, please let me know. Somewhere I believe teachers, and it's very easy it's somewhere to find faults with any system that exists. But I truly, truly believe that teachers across the world today have shown what it means to be a true guru. They are getting over their own, they're acquiring new skills, right? If they have any limitations, they're getting over that. Teachers are connected with children and parents. And I'll tell you a story about and wonderful awards we did. I know of even government teachers, it is not only about Satya Bharti school teachers, where government teachers, if they find that a child or a family is going through some stressful times, they do whatever that they can. And that's what being a true guru is all about. It is just not limited to education. Most of the teachers that I've spoken to, they say, yes, academics is something that we want to take forward, but what is more important for us is mental health of children right now. We want to keep them motivated. We want to keep them happy. And I think that is the biggest statement any teacher can make.
Very true.
So if I have 2 minutes, I'll talk about what happened when pandemic started, and all our staff, now I'm talking about Satya Bharti schools, which are run by Bharti Foundation. So every day, I would talk to 4 or 5 people from the team, non-teaching staff, so you have a lot of field teams, district coordinator, cluster coordinators, academic mentors, trainers. So I'll talk to 3, 4 of them every day, and our HR team supported it, just to stay in touch with them, that how are they feeling, how are their families, and listening to them directly, what are the challenges they're facing on the field. And every, I think twice a week, I would talk to 6, 7 teachers as well. So while I was talking to teachers, of course, I heard their stories on what kind of video they made on WhatsApp, and how, in villages, these teachers, most of our teachers are lady teachers. They have to look after their family. They are in joint families, right? Which means they have to look after cooking meals, looking after small kids. Parallelly, our training department is training them on how to make videos, or how to do teaching in a virtual world.
Mhm.
Plus, they are making teaching learning material for children. They're giving homework. They are checking homework. Our parents can't type messages. So whenever they have a doubt, they call up the teacher. So they're also call center.
Mhm.
Can you imagine what our village teachers went through, right? So I was talking to them. I started hearing, there was one teacher who said, ma'am, I, along with all the other teachers of this school, we made face masks. And I'm talking initial 35 days, okay? When none of us knew what we were dealing with, right? There was another teacher who said, I was talking to this parent and the grain had finished in their house. So I spoke to the sarpanch and grains, I made sure that grains were sent to that parent's house. I was speaking to a Haryana teacher, and I think her house was somewhere on the main road from where a lot of people were walking back to their villages. They, along with, I think they had a shop of halwai, so they had, which had closed down, but they had those big utensils and everything.
Mhm.
Every day in the morning, they started cooking meals, simple meal,
Mhm.
but giving meals to people who were walking. Pankaj, I was so much touched by this act, because understand they're doing job, they're looking after families, they themselves must be so psyched out that what is this disease, when will it get over? But they found that time, space, and more importantly, resources
Mhm.
to look after other people.
Mhm.
And then I was told these are not one-off stories, ma'am. First I thought they've selected those teachers who have done such work. So I asked HR, they said, no ma'am, we didn't know that they had done this kind of work. So then we launched something called Teacher Changemaker Awards, which just concluded on this Saturday.
Mhm.
We had an audience of over 1400. It was live on Facebook. Mr. Sunil Mittal came himself. Mr. Rakesh Mittal came himself. And you won't believe it, most of our board members came to recognize and award these teachers. So we actually, announced an award. Our teachers sent their stories, and employees from various Bharti Group companies, they became jury members. They read each story, they spoke to teachers, and they selected winners. I mean, it was such a privilege to honor these teachers. And these are very powerful human stories, Pankaj.
Wonderful, and I'm delighted that Bharti Foundation has done such a good work, and they have risen to the occasion and helped mankind like anything. Now kudos goes to you as well, because being a CEO of the foundation, obviously you had a lot of work to do. You kept people united in this pandemic, and there was a joy of helping different children and parents in whatever means possible. So that's really a great deed to mankind. We go to our second curiosity now, Mamta. And my second curiosity is, what are the opportunities this pandemic has created for this segment?
So Pankaj, I would say the first opportunity this pandemic has created is for all of us to become kind and caring human beings again, really, and caring not only for our families and relatives, caring for every person who's there, caring for animals, looking after environment, because I think everything is linked. So that is the biggest opportunity that we as mankind, we as humankind has today, and we must work on that. What I'm seeing happening around. So I will not talk about Twitter, because all of us are on Twitter and we're seeing some exceptional work being done by individuals. There are people, irrespective of what profession they were in or they are in, they are finding it within themselves to help people who need help, right? So I believe in these times, NGO sector and civil society, especially in India, has always done tremendous work. Any challenge, and you see our vibrant and strong NGO sector, our vibrant and strong civil society, vibrant and strong individuals, who come together. They don't need a platform. They don't need anybody to network. Everybody starts doing what is within their context to change. And that is what matters. As long as we say, okay, I can do these 4 things. I'm very inspired by this sentence, and it is my life's philosophy. It is something that Ripan Kapoor said. He was the founder of CRY. He said, what I can do, I must do.
Very powerful statement.
It's a very simple, but it's a very powerful statement. If something is within your power and you can do it, you must do it. And that's what we are seeing happening all around us.
Right.
I mean, I've seen corporate foundations, I've seen NGOs getting into food dispersal. People are giving slippers, people are giving food packets, people are giving clothes, people are giving masks. Everybody is doing what they can. I mean, we've seen when there was need for ventilators and things like that. There may be corporates working in whichever field, whichever sector. Everybody got on to trying to make ventilator, to make face shields and things like that. So the potential to do good, the potential to do right is huge. And I must say that a large number of us are rising towards it. And it is not only rich, middle class or upper middle class people. I have seen poorest of the poor sharing what they have. What is important is to share what you have, Per se, I believe that NGOs now would focus a lot more on health segment. Apart from supporting the government system that is there, creating programs around it. There are a lot of NGOs which do excellent work setting up camps in areas where perhaps a big hospital isn't there, and they do initial screenings and things like that. So there are many models of taking health up to the last segment. I believe that health is one focus area which would see huge growth. We would see development sector, civil society taking part in that. There will be, I see a lot of partnerships happening with the government sector, government hospitals, and not only NGO and civil society. I see a lot of corporate sectors now partnering with government, especially in the area of research, right? So that's one area where I do see growth coming in. I believe at micro level, at village level, we would need a lot of foot soldiers to take relief to people, correct? So that is, I'm sure very soon there would be time when NGOs would start looking at taking their impact further, deeper down. Many NGOs are now getting into COVID relief. And I think that's one area for at least coming months. I do see some kind of growth happening there as well. So, I also believe that at least I see it on social media. In villages, many mask making small enterprises are starting. So somewhere, and I'm reading some of the scheme, government is coming out with some schemes also to encourage micro entrepreneurship now. I think a lot of work will now go down there to entrepreneurs, each one of them perhaps hiring 1 or 2 more people. So I'm hoping that we would use this opportunity to create a lot many entrepreneurs, a lot many small businessmen who would, give jobs and opportunities to people around them. And I also believe that NGO sector also in coming days would open up, to provide relief, rehabilitation to people who've been affected by it.
Very true. My third curiosity comes from the second curiosity itself. So when you talked about a lot of development coming in the development sector, and it will open wide horizons for various people as well as the organizations, and CSR activities would find newer and broader ways to serve humanity. What are the employment prospects will it generate in near future?
So Pankaj, 2-3 things here. There was recently a study, I don't remember which agency did it, which actually said that 70 to 80% of the CSR funds are being committed towards COVID, right? Which means
Huge.
Most of the corporates would now look at, so they may have their central theme perhaps as education, and they would say, how is education getting impacted by COVID, and how do we help ensure education in spite of COVID. So I see a lot of corporates now getting into this new space. They would be talking to NGOs about it, and for many corporates, this will be a completely new area. And I do see a lot of opportunities opening up in coming days and weeks in this space itself. I have already talked about NGO sector per se. I know that most of the NGOs are now gearing up. They're finding resources to make sure that their program actually impacts people who require help. And there's a lot of NGOs which are coming together and working together to create those spaces. And they would have to take work really at the ground level. So my sense is that there would be opportunities in smaller towns and villages which may open up in coming days. That's my hope. I've also, when I was reading new education policy, I was also reading new education policy with a lot of interest because, it has brought, among many other things which are extremely good in the policy, the one thing that excites me a lot, because it is something we have been following in Satya Bharati schools, and which partly answers your question as well. The new education policy envisions role by community into schools, right? So I'll talk about Bharati Foundation program. In Satya Bharati schools, you see, we know that these poor kids cannot go for summer camps and experience new places. So what we do is we bring summer camps in for our children. So 2 philosophies. One is that they should learn new things. Second thing, which is very important for us, is that they should be rooted and connected with their culture and their community, correct? So what we do is for 15 days, we call people from local communities. So it could be a very old man and come and tell them the story of that river which is flowing by, or story of some infrastructure or some building which is very old. So we make sure that children are learning about their local environment, their local culture, the history, the stories. And the second thing that we do is we call in, let's say, a doctor, an IS officer, an army person, right? And they would come and tell their stories. So not only children are getting exposed to new professions, but the kind of effort this person made to become a doctor or to become a nurse or to become a fashion designer. So we have made sure that in our schools, community comes in to give exposure to children. And that is something the new education policy is also talked about. They've talked about a local expert coming in. So I'm really very excited about that because it gives opportunity even for village-based local people, right? To find a calling, to go to school, to influence young lives. So that is a very big opportunity going forward. There's a lot of emphasis on, giving options to children for many subjects. So, the NEP talks about giving choice of subjects to students, that a child should be able to select a mix of subjects as per her own, interest. So I believe in coming days, there will be a need for all these teachers who are these subject experts, and each school will have to have various subject teachers. So I see teaching as a profession picking up. In our country, we need good quality teachers. We need to attract talent. We have some, in government system, we have exceptional teachers, and this NEP gives, a lot of encouragement to them to innovate and to find the right method to teach children. So I'm very excited about looking at the NAP, the kind of opportunity it will offer to both local community to come and play a role, as well as for young people to look at teaching, to look at training, to look at entire pedagogical segment, to become experts in assessment and things like that. So there is this entire world which will open up, and NAP is showing us the way for that.
Great. So Mamta, you're very optimistic about this new education policy, and you are also talking about a lot of opportunities and employment prospects. This is going to create in terms of development sector. My next curiosity is going to be something personal for you, because when people do their MBAs or do their graduation, they talk about the corporate life. But since the beginning of your career, you always been tilted towards the development sector. You always talked about maybe about your heart going towards development sector to help poor, needy, so that they can someday be privileged. So what advice would you like to share with budding leaders which you feel has been inspirational from your journey?
So, I come from a family of educators. My father is a professor, my mother was a teacher, and somehow for my father, education sector per se was very important. So you won't believe it, I must be among very few people whose father was actually not happy that I got into an MBA, So I was doing my physics honors, I was doing MSc physics, and then I got admission into IMT Ghaziabad and MBA. And he felt that, somebody with my aptitude, or in his mind, his daughter with her caliber should contribute something, and should do something for the world, for the society. And his thoughts on MBA were his thoughts, which I will not repeat here. Mm-hmm. So, after I finished my MBA and I started my job, I started a job with a power consultancy. Mm-hmm. So while I was working, I guess sometimes upbringing does play a role. I was constantly at the back of the mind, you don't have a sense of fulfillment. You had a sense of professional fulfillment, so if you're in a consultancy, you finish a report, you do a good job, you feel good about it, doing a good consulting project. But there was a constant nagging sense of, that I wanted to do more, right? And what I started doing, I started, visiting a lot of NGO offices. And if you're an MBA in marketing, in those days, now I'm talking year 1992, 93, right? In those days, NGOs did not know what to do with an MBA in marketing, correct? So I was living with this constant sense of emptiness, if I may use that word. And suddenly comes this advertisement from CRY. Those days, CRY Child Relief and You, today Child Rights and You. They were looking for a fundraiser to lead their fundraising initiative, And that was, I think it was almost like some superior power actually answered my prayers, because that it required marketing skills, correct? So it was best of both worlds.
Something like your dream has come true.
It was almost like somebody answered my dream. It was meant to be. In 1993, I joined CRY. Rest is really history. CRY was, I started a lot of fundraising initiatives over there and got tremendous recognition, and went on to, join the board of an international fundraising group, which is now called Resource Alliance, UK based, and one of the leading fundraisers of South Asia. But that phase and that, that led to where I am today. Okay. Mm-hmm. And it was not an easy decision. When you're young, all your friends, your peers are doing corporate job, correct? And you take this call to shift to development sector, which has its own challenges. Key one being that it never pays as well as your corporate sector would. So it was a decision that it was a leap of faith I took. And you have to have a family which supports you when you're taking such, because you're shifting your career, right? And after CRY, after 9 years, then for 2-3 years, I kind of worked with various NGOs, because CRY meant that I was working in a certain sector, and I wanted to widen my horizon. And then Bharti Foundation happened to me, which focuses on education. I cannot tell you how happy my father is today. Finally he feels that I'm using my degree, my skills, my caliber to do something good for the society. Today he's proud of me, So I think life is a journey where you do have to sometimes take that risk. Sometimes you have to look within and see what is driving you, right? And you need people around you who would support you, correct? I've been fortunate, that life has given good opportunities. Life has given very good co-workers. I mean, wherever a person reaches because you had a very good team which delivered, right? So that has been my journey, and I think today's generation, the new generation, I'm really very happy. They're not limited by any boundaries or any definitions, and I think the world which is coming now, right? A world of gig economy, a world of where, work from home may become a norm, correct? Where, like I talked about micro entrepreneurship, there may be serial entrepreneurs. These youngsters are serial entrepreneurs already, right? So I think something that I tried, and I think I took a big leap of faith, is something very ordinary for youngsters of today. They go on trying out new things and new opportunities. So I'm very hopeful that as national education policy is now seeing that they're saying don't divide people into science stream, commerce stream, art stream. Life is, such a continuum. How can you have education in that stream? Similarly, I'm seeing the youngsters of today, they are looking at their career as a continuum, right? I know of youngsters who could be working in a management consultancy, for joint ventures, also become evening hobby chefs, right? So I think I'm very hopeful that this younger generation will find that resolve within themselves. They have the creativity, they have the opportunities. Today, thanks to this new world, everybody is connected, so they can access opportunities faster. And my only hope is that people who have a little bit more privileges on their side will take a lot more bolder decisions to reach those youngsters perhaps who need a little bit help, to come up, to mentor them, to guide them. So that's what my hope is. And I think I would like to end here.
That's so nice. In fact, Mamta, what you talked about, about youngsters, that they are doing a lot of things. And I vividly remember, one of the things which came in Times of India, that now we will see students like physics with music. So,
yes.
So you rightly talked about it's going to be a continuum wherein there will be no boundary. Anybody can reach anywhere. And I think that's the privilege we are going to face in this new education policy which you vividly described. And I'm sure the kind of achievements which you have got through your sheer hard work and dedication towards society and mankind is something which is be very inspirational even to youngsters as well, because doing something today will no ways perish our history, because people those who have done something in the past and they are doing something in the present are making grounds for the future for youngsters to come and take the stage forward. So it was really very nice speaking to you, Mamta. All your hard talks, I'm sure this is going to create some kind of impact for our viewers in terms of instilling hope, seeing how people are immensely helping the society, and people at the helm like you being a CEO of Bharti Foundation are trying to help every bit possible to instill hope in the society. Thank you so much for being a part of Vyapt Growth Series.
Thank you, Pankaj.